Cairo Mafia, I know you guys are like, wow, I can't wait for the next episode. Just to look at Joe. Look at that face.
I'm on the edge of my seat right now. We're literally right now. I'm on the edge of the seat.
Looking at your own reflection on your screen, then wow, I'm
I
excited.
I don't even know what I'm going to say, but I know it's going to be something worth listening to. I know. I feel it. I
So
feel
do
it.
you wake up in the morning before you even run your fingers through your hair, which looks like you didn't do this morning, and you go, and you just look and you go, hey, oh, I'm perfect already.
I do the
Hey,
Fonzie thing. Remember, you go like this, and you're like, "Hey,
hey.
fucking, it looks good. What the fuck? Hey, hey,
That's like a daily thing. You're like, I
hey."
love you. No, I love you. No, I love you. No, no, I love you. Is that what you do in the morning?
You're funny. No, not exactly. Depends. Depends if it's leg day. If it's leg day, which I had a couple days ago, not my favorite day. The only good part of leg day is when it's over, then I'm okay.
Oh my God. That's what I always say when I'm in the locker room, getting my sweatshirt or whatever. They're like, hey, you done? I'm like, best part of the day is walking out.
Exactly.
Best part of my day.
Exactly.
I tweet.
I know we got some important stuff to talk about. I went to Sebastian Maniscalco. I had a birthday in February, so my girlfriend got me tickets. I am telling you, absolutely hysterical. Funniest I've ever seen him. I couldn't breathe. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. And he's got a little bit of an Italian like story, but he didn't it wasn't all about immigrant parents, and I'm not saying that's bad. He kind of comes through that vantage point of old school upbringing and how he views the world, and he was just telling stories. But one of the funny ones was when he said when he gets out of bed and he's now in his 50s. He said, like when I get out of bed in the morning, like I never feel at my age, I don't feel refreshed. I don't get up in the morning and go, wow, I feel great. That was a great night's sleep. He said, it's the opposite. He says, I feel worse in the morning than I did it the night before. And, he just is going on and on. I'm like, man, I can totally relate to that. So,
Oh, dude.
funny
Yeah, I'm
story. He was
all.
really good, really good. So, obviously, a little honorary tip for Sebastian. I mean, being the
Dude,
Italian.
we got to get him on here.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we got to get him and Robert. Hey, weren't you supposed to work on Sebastian?
I did. I tried.
I
He's
know.
he's
I
got a
tried to get
podcast
Robert De
now,
Niro.
and he's pretty funny. But he's in a really big tour right now. So, um, and I was not VIP. I couldn't get backstage or nothing. Everything was sold out when
All right.
when.
Well, I'm going to look into some connections.
Yeah, that'd be
All
good.
right. So, what do we want to talk about? So, Joe and I spent like 15 minutes because we always do, just hanging out, and we're thinking what we're going to talk. So, here it is, man. This is going to be unveiled right now. Woof! Open the curtains. This is door number 3. Open it up. So, whoa! Look at all those notes. Yeah, that was fast. So we decided, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. Because what do you always talk about? Principle and lifestyle. We're going to show you literally how from day one that they can get lifestyle not only to the point where they agree to it, but to the point where you're going to get immediate and extended family referrals right from day one. Now, here's the thing. If you can get family referrals on day one, they probably get it. So obviously the first thing is mindset. So I'll start out with this. First of all, it's always been our purpose, and you can attest to this, Joe, would be to disrupt healthcare, right? To affect generations. We never wanted to build a practice because that's boring. One, it's boring. Two, it's one at a time, and you're just never going to get there one at a time. And what do we really want to do, man? It's principle. It's a message for humanity. We want to change healthcare, so you have to affect generations. Now, I'm sure the principal people that are listening to this are like, yeah, I have 3 generations. I think the standard. What's your standard? So you look at an elite, we set the standard of 90%. So if 90% of parents are bringing their kids, they get it. If 40% are bringing their kids, you feel like you have a family practice, but
Yes,
what's happening to the other 50, 60% of those kids? They're getting
right.
vaccinated, they're going to pediatricians. So one, raise the bar. 2, we're going to raise the bar above. You look at a high jump bar and it's 7'2", but you can only jump 5 feet. 5 feet's great, but don't run under the bar and jump under the mat in the stadium like you won the gold medal. So, and I think that's the problem in the profession of chiropractic. If we've accepted lower standard because we didn't know how to jump over the bar. So rather than say, look, I need to master my skill so I can jump 7'2", people get happy with jumping 5 feet. Why? Because you created a great life. So, yes, create a great life. So we're going to start. I'll start with 1, that's mindset. And number 2, I would know before I would walk into a new patient, we have a patient application form. The first thing I would look at, are they married? Do they have kids? Since we want to get referrals, I got to talk about generational patterns. What diseases are in their family history? Have they been to a chiropractor before? Chances are they think chiropractic is about back pain. What drugs are they on? Now they think health is about medicine and chiropractic is about pain. So these are all the beliefs I have to shatter. Now, when I go in there, it's like, I'm going to create a leader that gets it to the level that they're going to want to bring their husband and they're going to ask me to bring their kids at the end of day 1, which means they have to agree that chiropractic is a healthcare lifestyle by the end of day 1. Now they're walking out with back pain. So we're going to show you how to create that person that they actually want to agree to that at the end of day 1. So today we're going to go through day 1, next episode, day 2. We're going to go through the daily visit, re-exam, maybe a close of a workshop. So over the next series of probably about 6 episodes, you will have systems, mindset, and things that I would guarantee you are not going to find in the profession, or the whole profession would have 100 PBA.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you better subscribe, follow these, stay diligent. And we also help you master these skills in the boot camps. So you have one in May. I have one day 1, day 2, June 6th through 8th. You will go to these events. You will master those skills. So what's your website, Joe?
Chiropracticconsulting.com. Or just go on Facebook, Joe Borio, and yeah, we just posted some links, some discounts. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be at Fort Lauderdale. So yeah, we're gonna go over this. We do it a little different than Fred, but same mindset. And yeah, we're gonna hit it. So the mindset, your communication, your protocol procedure, working on yourself. I think that's, I say it out of love. I just think that's a weakness. I think, there's a great line I heard many years ago with businessmen, and it was, your competence instills confidence in your practice, in your patient. So if I'm competent and give you at least the feeling that I'm competent, and that's going to come through protocols. If I'm in there winging it, if I know boom, 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 and I'm hitting things in a very systematic way, hey, that's organized. Am I dressed up in a uniform? Does the office look organized and neat? Does any form they fill out, is it like 30 generation copies, or does the thing look like brand new, crisp, new with some color? Like, those are all things that scream trust, impression, competence, professional impressions, right? So all of that, we don't think about that sometimes, but that's all stacking up. So now when I have that interaction with somebody and Fred's in there day 1 and we're talking lifestyle, we're talking lifetime, we're talking get the family in, we're talking coming in here is something that everyone should do, including him. He should have been doing it 30, 40 years ago, right? Or in his case, well, I don't want to go over his age, but 50 plus years ago, that's a different conversation than do you hurt here? Do you hurt here? One of the posts I made recently was, in a symptomatic patient practice, we're really used to, and we're taught to tell them why they hurt. Right? This is pinched and you're degenerative here and it's crooked here and da, 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 da. But if you're talking lifetime wellness, that type of practice, the practitioner is what? He's asking questions, she's asking questions about how they got sick. Why are they sick? That's a different conversation. It's going to give you different answers and it's going to lead them to a lifestyle mentality.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start out. You start with how do you begin that conversation where they understand the principle and they understand lifestyle? So first thing is, hey man, they got to understand chiropractic. Your spinal cord is your lifeline. Like if they don't get the principle, lifestyle, they're not going to get lifestyle. So how do you begin that? What are some things that you do on day one?
We do two things that pretty much set that up. One, we have a brochure that we came up with, and it's on subluxation. So when they come in, they get a tour of the office, where we basically describe what's happening in areas, and then we give them a brochure that's listed as subluxation, and then they read it, and then they get asked a couple of questions on the brochure right after. So we're immediately taking charge by asking questions. We're immediately talking about subluxation, nervous system, how it affects their health. Never are we starting off with where do you hurt, Fred? What brought you in? What's going on? And then we immediately go into a pre-consultation, which is a little bit of a talk and a few questions.
Okay, so you're giving great principles, but what are some of the initial questions that you ask?
Well, we go right into 30-second drill. So, essentially what controls your body? Where does health come from? What interferes with that ability of your body to communicate? How long, should that be taken care of? What happens if you get sick and crooked? What happens to the organs? What happens to your lifestyle? What happens to the quality of your life, the length of your life, etc.? And then we go right into the kids.
Okay, so hang on a sec, because so you give them the pamphlet before they go back and meet the doctor? Do you give them? Okay, so they're doing it at the front desk after the paperwork and all that.
Yes.
And how long does it take people to usually read it?
Oh, a minute and a half.
A minute. And then does the front desk ask them those questions and you have scripted questions?
Correct.
Or do they go back and the doctor asks them those questions?
No, well, unless they don't have a staff to help them out, the staff asks the questions, and then
They do that at the front desk or in the exam room?
In the exam room.
Okay, got it. So what I want to do is like you're giving principles, but here it is. Now, can they buy that pamphlet from you?
Yeah, they got to just reach out. We have a couple of packages that we sell to get.
Yeah, then take a look at those pamphlets, man, because you're talking to a dude with a 400 PVA. There's something he's doing right. And what's he doing right? We all have heard you have one chance to make a first impression. So this is the first impression that you're making.
Yes. Yes.
So you get them right into health.
We get them right into the conversation because, again, old school, right? I did it traditionally. Where did I learn? And again, I say this out of love. Most people learn how to run their office through, hey, what did my buddy do? What did my chiropractor do? I went to an event. I like that speaker. He said this. Oh, I like her. She said that. And we go back and we just start, tweaking things and moving things. And again, I say that out of love, but that is not a system. That is not how to run your office. You spend all this money to learn to be a chiropractor, to get certified and licensed, and then we spend the least, we cheap it out. We spend the least amount in an effort to learn how to run something that's going to basically not only serve people, but make me the living and make me wealthy and create freedom. And it boggles my mind. So really, when we start talking about time, energy, and money, it should be, how do I run my office? And I get it. Some guys are like, well, I don't want to. I like to say this and, I don't want to lose that. You know what? You're going to do what you're going to do in the end. But the reality is, how about following some protocols, some structure, some systems, and then why reinvent the wheel? Listen, I do investing, right? I don't, what I do how I got good at investing? I didn't wing it. I didn't take $100 grand and go, all right, let me figure this out. I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what I did? I read Benjamin Graham. Who's Benjamin Graham? He wrote the book called The Intelligent Investor that Warren Buffett read when he was in high school. He went to work for Benjamin Graham and he made Warren Buffett who he was. He taught school at Columbia. So I read The Intelligent Investor. I read Money Matters. I read Carl Icahn. I read Dilio. I read anyone and everyone that was the best. Who are the best? Not my buddy, I don't want to talk to somebody that's not wealthy, and I don't want to talk to somebody that's not unbelievably successful. I want to find out who are the most successful people out there, who are the best investors out there. What do they
Well,
recommend? What do they teach? There's principles. And then, yeah, granted, I might put my flavor on it, but now I follow those principles. Guess what happens to my investments? Guess what happens to my money? So I'm
well,
getting
also,
the
let's talk to
10%
the
return every year.
people that join practice management. And so you're going, so there's part of the audience list. Yeah, 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 I get it. But I paid for this coach and I paid for this coach. And I talk to people all the time that they didn't get the results they wanted. I mean, every coach can help you in some way, right?
Sure.
But the problem is what's been taught in the practice management groups. Patient education. Miss Jones, how does your back pain affect your life? Well,
Correct.
let's give them what they want and then we'll tell them what they need.
Correct.
And that's the problem is you
Right.
may have invested tens of thousands of
Right.
dollars, but you were taught to start with pain. And
Yes.
that's the problem. I had 4 coaches, they all taught me the same thing. And then I realized patient education and starting with that, because again, you have one chance to make a first impression. And if you start with pain, even though you were told that by your practice management groups, you're going to limit your PVA. You're going to limit your retention. And so,
Totally.
again, so full circle, because I know there's a bunch of people like that. Look at what Joe's doing. He's starting with health and the principle. So before they even talk to the doctor,
Correct.
this team is sending him a more qualified person.
Exactly correct.
There you go. Now we
Correct.
do that through our patient application system, talked about subluxation and disease. We do that on our new patient tour. We have a trash can where, so the team already starts with, hey, here's the kids area. When parents learn how their spine and nervous system develops is going to determine their health for the rest of their life. Here's where kids come and play after they get adjusted. They raise their kids as this being their primary health care. I see you have 3 kids on your patient application form.
Exactly.
Ask Dr. Joe about your kids. So what are we doing? We're sending in a patient that comes to you. We have correction of the month, pre and post x-rays, where we show here's the disease they have. They fix their spine. All these diseases are gone. We have a trash can here. It's called the trash can of limiting beliefs. Here's where people, when they learn spine and nervous system as a foundation, they get more energy moving into their body and they heal. They go back to their doctors and find out they don't need their drugs anymore, because what their doctor didn't tell them was they didn't have a health problem, they had an energy problem that caused a health condition. So we do this through the tour before they get there. Now, what are you saying, everyone? I see you're on blood pressure medication. I see you have a family history of that. Ask Dr. Joe about your high blood pressure and the generational patterns has created in your family.
Exactly.
So what are you already doing? You're prompting them to talk about their dad and their uncle, and you're setting them up for extended family referrals.
Exactly.
Now, then they get in there and you do the pre-consult. So tell me a little bit about that. We got to move fast through this. So
yeah, pre-consultation is we do ours on a digital. We have an avatar now, so we went on one of the higher end systems. You pick out obviously an actor that's digitized. Came out phenomenal. It's got examples of spine, nervous system, autonomic chart. They're explaining that. It's 3 minutes and 40 seconds long, and it's a pre-consult. So we're going to do a very clear the 3 questions on the health, spine, nervous system, how it relates to health, sickness, and disease. Then we ask them the questions. Then we go right into the pre-consultation. Then we go, now they're pre-qualified. So every question I ask or they ask is related to the nervous system. It's not related or the health of the body and sickness and disease. It's not like, where does your back hurt or how does your back hurt? It's very much like, so Fred, as you learned, when the spine is subluxated and as that spine puts pressure on the nervous system, the body's going to break down. It's going to cause sickness and disease, not only in the spine, but in organs in the lower body. So
now
let's talk
notice what
about
he
what
just
brought you.
said. He didn't say it's going to cause pain,
Correct.
sickness, and disease,
Correct.
not only in the spine. So
Correct.
that's where you don't say pain.
We never say pain.
Right. Exactly. That's the transition. That's the reframe.
Correct.
Right. So now they're
Correct.
going not only in the spine, oh, that must be why my back hurts. But Joe's not saying that.
Right.
That's the difference.
Here's the reality. And again, this is mindset. If you have a clogged artery in your heart, what does it cause? Right? I mean, you could say a heart attack. Well, how do you know you're having a heart attack? Maybe it's pain, maybe it's not, right? But what's it cause? It causes, right? It's the result of sickness and disease that causes death. So the reality is when you have clogged nerve holes, nerve channels, IVFs, and there's compression, again, it's the result or leading to sickness and disease, but it causes death of surrounded tissue, necrotic tissue, 1999, Journal of Neuropathophysiology. When you're subluxated and you get compression of a nerve root, you immediately lead to necrosis. Not my words, that's the neuropathophysiologist. You're getting necrosis of the neurofibrils in the nerve root immediately. So the neurofibril dies, the nerve starts to die. Wherever those nerve impulses, mental impulses, energy goes to those organs, those systems get dis-ease, disease. They, what's the end of sick? Death, right? Death of tissue.
Okay. So hang on a sec,
Yeah,
because all this is secondary to the most important thing that you did. The most important thing he did were two things. One, he gave an analogy because people understand clogged arteries and heart attacks. He created an association with nerve compression and disease and even death, right? And then what else did he do? He told a story. So you put your analogy in the middle of a story. And that's what people understand. They're learning an abstract principle, and people learn abstract principles in their right brain, not in their left brain.
yes.
Now, the rest of the stuff was left brain talk, but they already made the association in their right brain and they understood it because of the analogy. And that's the mastery of Joe, is he knows how to accelerate how fast people get it. And then his focus is very narrow: nervous system, energy, life, health.
Correct. Correct.
Nothing outside of that.
Nothing outside. If anytime they bring in symptoms, which they will, and I appreciate that, we don't neglect it. We don't say, I don't want to talk about that. Well, you know what? I appreciate that. I'm going to do what? I'm going to grab it. So Fred's like, well, doc, I appreciate that, but then this is really killing me. What are we going to, what are we going to do about that? Fred, I'll tell you something. That's a great question. I appreciate that question. I have other people ask me the same thing. So as your doctor, here's the real concern. If that's torqued, which it is, subluxated, and it's putting pressure on those systems, right, leading you to have some discomfort, what's happening to the joint? Where else does that go? Look at the chart. Large intestine, prostate. How long do you think it took to get sick like that, like an artery in your heart? It's going to take decades. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do an exam. We're going to take some x-rays to see where you're what. I take x-rays to see where you're sick inside. That's my sentence. I want to see where you're subluxated, where you're sick inside, that's causing you to have some sickness and illness on the outside, right? So let's take those x-rays so you're sick inside, and then I'm going to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have a conversation. I'm paraphrasing here, but we're going to have a conversation about what we found, what nerves, what systems affected, most importantly, what organs are developing potential sickness and disease, and the best recommendation moving forward and what we need to do to take care of it. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, where we're going with it day one.
Yeah. So let me just go through a bit of what we go through, because we're saying the same thing.
Sure.
We just say it in
Absolutely.
different ways.
Yes.
So in our pre-consult, we start with, hey, brain sends energy down the spinal cord. It's like a river. What am I doing? Analogy. Sends energy all the organs. All the organs are totally dependent. And now we say, one, to keep you alive, right? Two, to keep you healthy. Now, the amount of energy going through the spinal cord is going to determine whether you're in the state of health or state of disease, because that's what we talk about in the daily visit. They go, let me show you what determines either state. And that's when we go into a subluxation, right? And then we use an analogy: dimmer switch in a wall shuts the energy down. Once again, accelerating the learning. Now, the organ progressively weakens and causes disease. Now, if they've been to another chiropractor, we say subluxation, it's called a subluxation, right? And then we say, did your other chiropractor teach you about that? Now, 98% of the time, they're going to say no. So then we say, well, what you may quickly learn is what's been controlling your health your whole life. Now you got their attention. So then you say, dimmer switch wall breaks down, causes disease. And then you say, do you think that, would you have liked to have known that? Because what am I doing? I'm changing their belief system.
Exactly.
Now, what they didn't know has been running their health their whole life.
Right.
Do you think that's important? Now, by the question, do you think that's important? You're moving it up their priority list. So then by the time we get in the consult, and I know you do this, Joe.
Yes.
We frame it the same. We talk about energy, not getting to the organs, right? And now you have ulcerative colitis, you have this, you have this, you have this. So it's a timeline. And then we tell them health patterns are generational. So 3 questions. Now, we're not looking for health problems. We're looking for health patterns. What's the difference? A health problem could be asthma. A health pattern is immune system. So if you have somebody in their 20s with asthma, their mom that's in their late 40s could have MS, rheumatoid, or autoimmune, IBS, autoimmune. That is just immune system that's been subluxated longer. So first question, who did you get it from? Who else has an immune system problem? They have IBS, digestive problems, ulcerative colitis, MS. Anybody have cancer? Oh my God, my mom had cancer. Did she survive? Yes, thank God. Many times you find out, no. I would say cancer is a weakness in the immune system. Right?
Exactly.
Which is true.
Exactly.
So I'd say it's possible that you could be following that pattern. You have an immune system pattern, and asthma is really the beginning of autoimmune.
Yes.
Right. So you may be following that pattern. Now, what if they have kids? Who did you give it to? So you got a 26-year-old mom as your patient, a 48, 50-year-old mom that had cancer that may have gotten through it or maybe not. And then they have a 5 or 3-year-old kid. One question, who'd you get it from? Second question, who are you giving it to? Now, a 3-year-old, what are they going to have? I mean, you got a 3-year-old with asthma. That kid is really, they're extremely sick.
Correct.
But you're not going to see that. What are you going to see? Ear infection, sinus problems, hay fever, right? Or the beginning of allergies, recurrent colds. How often do they get sick? Do they have sinus problems? They often have snot running out of their nose. Do they have difficulty sleeping? That's the beginning of an immune system pattern. They're just not further down the timeline. The further down the timeline, the worse the diagnosis. That's why you're not looking for the problem, you're looking for the pattern. Now you get a kid with sinus problems, a mom had cancer, daughter's got asthma, kid's got sinus problems. You're passing it on to your son.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, now you speak to their values. So as a mom, number one, you want to make sure that you're healthy. You got a family. You're young. You already have signs of a weakened immune system and signs you're following your mom's path.
Yes.
As a mom, would you do anything possible in the world to make sure your kid didn't follow this pattern?
Yes.
Exactly. Now they're going to say, oh my God, do you think I should bring him in? Now this is what you might do, Joe. And here's what would most doctors do? Oh yeah, bring him in. Let's set him up for an appointment. No, you're pulling him in too fast. I would say, what do you think you should do? If they're following that pattern, how important is it for you to get them checked?
Yeah. Have they been checked? Have they been under care? Has anyone checked their spinal nervous system?
Yeah, your pediatrician didn't tell you that about an immune system problem. Because what are we going to do? You're not taking them back to the pediatrician for another set of antibiotics, right?
Exactly.
So I'd say, well, based on what you just learned, what do you think you should do? Well, I definitely think I should bring him in. Well, would you like to make him an appointment on the way out? Because when it's their idea, they'll be committed. How many
Correct.
people have said, Mom, set up your appointment, let's do this? You're telling them what to do, and then they have an excuse. Why? Because you pulled them in too hard.
Yes.
So when you
Yes.
say, what do you think you should do? Well, I think I should make an appointment. Well, you want to make one for him tomorrow on the way out?
Right.
Oh, definitely. Well, do
Make
you
it their
think you should
idea.
go pick him up from school this afternoon?
Right. Make it their idea. You know, a good lawyer never asks a question that they don't know the answer to, or don't, you know, so if you say, is it straight or crooked? If you say, like Fred's teaching us, right? Like, what mother doesn't want the best for his child? Like, would you do anything to prevent them from having that same pattern? Would you prevent them from developing what you have now, or something more serious, something more sick or more disease? Of course, yes. You know, so again, it makes it easy because you already know the answer. No one's going to go, yeah, no, I want them to be sick. You know, we do a quick question for a referral. Like when I ask for a referral, or let's say you're going to do a video, I know what you're going to say. Hey, Fred, would you be willing to help me help somebody else? Who says fucking no to that? You know, maybe Jeffrey Dahmer, right? But I mean,
He would still say
99.9% are
yes.
going to go, oh, yeah, doc, what do you need me to do? Whatever. And then it's like, hey, would you do this? Can I record a video? Can I hand you this flyer about doing an outside talk at your work or whatever? But I'm asking a question that I already know the answer. So like Fred's teaching us, what mother's not going to want to do everything for their child? So once you identify that, you elevate that, you get her to pay attention to it. Now that she's, oh, wow, I wasn't even aware of that. Now you couple in with what the question is now, because her perspective and perception is different. I always say when you go to a football game, like Fred, if you're at the midline 52nd row and I'm right behind you, but I'm on the third tier, and then another friend of ours is on the other side, and another friend of ours is on the end zone, and another friend of ours is all the way to the top, and you get us all together at the end of the game, we all know the score. All of us have a totally different experience of the game. So we're trying to get them to have they need to sit in the seat, right? And have the perception and perspective necessary in order to make a better decision. So Fred's asking the question to get them in the seat. And then when he asks the question, when they're in that seat, they're going to give you the answer that they need to have in order to get their kids in.
Well, and here's the difference. Yeah, that's awesome. The difference is when I say, as a parent, would you go to the end of the earth to make sure your kid grows up as healthy as possible?
Of course, yes.
So but the difference is I'm not educating.
Yes.
That's not patient education.
Correct.
And what else isn't? It's not just asking a question.
Yes.
It's asking a question that's their highest value
100%.
as a mother. When you align with their values and purpose, they become unstoppable. Yes, so what Joe and I are doing through the questions we ask, if you look at not what we're saying, but what we're doing.
Yes.
We're speaking to the values of a parent.
Yes.
And so I always tell my clients this, I'll just use you an example. Dr. Joe wants to educate. Joe the father, Joe the husband, Joe the child of God will have far more impact with what you would say to a parent than Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe the father would do what Joe always does, tell a story. With my kids, I know I'll go to the ends of the earth, man. I mean, thank God they're under chiropractic care, but man, if they had anything, there's nothing that would stop me from getting them healthy. Correct. Do you feel the same way?
Yes.
And they go, absolutely. They're going to give you a superlative answer. Well, then if that's the case and they're following their pattern, and we help hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids with this same pattern, do you think they should get checked?
Yeah.
They're going to give you absolutely. Can I go get them this afternoon?
Yes.
Like, do you have any appointments this afternoon? Yeah, that's what those types of questions will elicit. Right. And it's so much easier, man.
Correct. Now they're motivated. You're not pulling, right? You're not pulling them in all the time. You don't feel like you're defending yourself. That's one of the things that you run into trouble when you tell people versus when you ask them. When they come up with the answer, when you say, yeah, I'm sick, it's been there a long time, That's a totally different relationship I have with you as a practice member than if I say, hey, Fred, it's been there a long time. See, if I say that, I'm telling you. So then I'm telling you, I have to redefend that all the time. Fred, remember how bad this is? Remember, Fred, remember it hurts here and it's out here. Doc, what was wrong again? Da 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 da. We tell. But if I say, Fred, man, do you remember hey, Doc, when do you think I'm going to feel better? Doc, I'm still having a lot of training. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And that's understandable. You know, we've had other people in the same situation. As your doctor, Fred, let me ask you this. Do you remember the concern? Remember how serious it is? What's happening to that nerve? How long you think it's been there for? Like, now they're saying, wow. So now they leave when you say, well, when do you think you're going to get better, right? They're like, oh, it's going to take a while. Of course it's going to take a while. But I didn't tell them, hey, it's going to be 4 weeks. Holy shit, shoot yourself in the head. Because you say 4 weeks, they're counting on that fucking kill. 4 weeks not working. It's not working, son of a bitch. I've been in here 30 times. I paid $400 out of pocket. It's not working. Don't set yourself up for failure that way. Get them. Well, listen, I appreciate that. Fred, why do you think you're still hurting? What do you think's going on in there? It's a totally different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, you know, and then in the consultation, you're telling a story of their timeline. Like you guys, you know, CJ Mertz, 5 injuries in 5 minutes. Well, they don't care about musculoskeletal. But when a person says, well, you know, I have IBS. Well, how long have you had that? Well, I've had that, you know, 10 years. Well, what happened 10 years ago? Now, if you had allergies as a kid, that's the immune system problem that progressed.
Yes.
But no, I didn't have allergies. No, I didn't have asthma. No. There's a trauma. Oh, well, so a lot of times when people give you a time frame, well, I had it 5 years. What happened 5 to 7 years ago? There was a trauma. What do people say? No, there wasn't. Oh, yeah. Because when all of a sudden disease comes on, there's only 2 causes. You had a pattern that progressed, which means you had a condition with a different name and it's been there longer, or you had a trauma. Now, here's what you tell people. Traumas trigger generational patterns.
Yes.
Because once you weaken the nervous system, any generational weakness in your body will all of a sudden appear. The condition will appear. And so what are you going to tell them when you got in that car accident? Well, whiplash injury occurs the lower part of your neck. You know, when the doctor gave you the inhaler, did he ask you about any traumas? No, he didn't. So he didn't tell you whiplash injuries are going to damage the nerves that go directly to the lungs. They didn't tell you that. Now, why are we doing that? Because a lifestyle chiropractic person doesn't go back to the MD.
Right.
And that MD learned in Anatomy 101, they have a spinal cord that carries energy to their body.
Correct.
Right. And then they spend the rest of the time learning how to fuck it up. So doctors need to be responsible.
Yes.
And that's where we have the Back to Health book with all, you know, if someone had asthma like that, I would go circle the study that talks about asthma and respiratory problems, especially after traumas. So I'd say, now here's what I would say in a consult. I would say, well, what the MD should have told you is he should have found a history of trauma. What he should have said, look, when you're struggling for your breath, here's the inhaler. Take a couple of hits of that so you don't think you're going to die. But what you really need to do is you added trauma to the nerves that go to your lungs. And what you need to do is there's 3 chiropractors I work with. Let's find out where you live and use this inhaler in the meantime, but go to the chiropractor because they can repair that nerve injury that'll make your lungs stronger again. That's what they should say.
Right. If your brain can't talk to it, your body can't heal it, man. I mean, it's that simple. If your brain can't get energy, if your brain can't get signals, if your brain can't get information to it, your body is going to struggle healing it. You know,
well, we understand the principle, and what I'm saying is, what did I do? I told a story of what they weren't told.
Yes.
That is the truth.
Yes.
And now they've suffered because of it. They suffered with who they believe in their identity.
Yes.
They've suffered with their self-esteem, which that is the most important and significant suffering. That's Tony Robbins. People don't buy products or services, they buy identity.
Right.
So how have you felt about yourself knowing that, man, your lungs are weak? You go out and you try to be active on the weekends, you don't have your inhaler, you're screwed.
Yes, exactly.
How have you felt about yourself being dependent on that? Now, when we go to the exam, we do postural exams, but it doesn't matter. Palpation, looking for the subluxation. People go to doctors because they're injured, not because they have pain. Pain is a normal part of life, but injury they can't fix by themselves. So as you're palpating and they're squirming, what we do say, here's where this is injured. This is injured here, damaging the nerve. This is injured here, shutting down the energy to the organs. Did your other doctors talk to you about that?
No, of course not.
That's why you transfer the trust.
Yeah.
Now that's, hey, you know what? Your 8-year-old kid might be following the same pattern, right? You have asthma, they have allergies. It's the same issue. Asthma is just allergies that got worse. If they're following this posture pattern, do you think it's important to know that they're following that pattern and that this thing is easily fixable and they can heal and never suffer like you've suffered?
Exactly. Or worse.
Or worse. How
was
important
told,
is
or
that
worse.
to you as a parent?
Exactly. Critical. Yeah, it's everything.
Do you think she get him checked?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Would this afternoon be okay?
Yeah, this afternoon works.
Yeah. Hey, because I know you're actually really concerned about what you just learned, I'll make time this afternoon if you want to pick him up for school. We need about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you can take 20 minutes, because you look real, I know you're concerned about this, and I know the urgency that you're experiencing right now. What am I doing? I'm speaking into them the emotions I want them to feel.
Right. Exactly. I will, we're talking, I know we only got a couple minutes, but we're talking about, what their experience is at the medical doctor. And again, I'm not saying all medicine's bad and what have you, but so very, very briefly, I had to go in for a physical. I got a history of a blood clot issue. So I had to go in for a physical, and I have a new doctor because I live in Florida now, and is a nice guy. His name's Gutierrez. So I go in, he does his blood pressure, he does his weight, and he says, okay, I'm going to run some blood work on. We're going to see you next time. So a week later, I get my blood done. I go back in a week later, and this is what he recommends. I'm about 25 pounds overweight. I would agree with that. I would say maybe 28, but so he immediately wants to put me on Ozempic. Doesn't talk nutrition, doesn't talk, hey, what's your activity level? Nothing. Immediately wants to put me on Ozempic. Second thing, he says, your blood pressure's up a little bit. Well, when I go to the doctors, my blood pressure always goes up. If I sit there and get it tested 3 times, I'm 120/80. I'd like to get you on some blood pressure medication. Number 2. Number 3, he says to me, your cholesterol's high. Now, my HDL is high, which is why my total cholesterol's high. But who gives a fuck if it's not over 300? I don't give a shit. Anyone recommending statins unless you're 400, 500 is insane with all the new research that's coming out. I mean, that's not even our opinion. That's the medical. So he wants to put me on a statin drug. And get this, he says, geez, we're coming into the pneumonia season, flu season. Have you had your COVID shot? He wants to give me a flu. I'm not fucking making this up. He wants to give me a flu shot. He wants to give me a pneumonia shot, and he wants to give me a COVID shot. Anyone recommending COVID shots after the 2 recent studies that came out just on myocardial dysfunction and inflammation, especially in men that are healthy, like off the chart. So this guy wants to load me up and inject me when I'm in there. I'm like, doc, straight out, no. But think about this. I'm not Joe Borio, the chiropractor. I'm not Joe Borio that has some knowledge and expertise. I'm not Joe Borio that has a vision, a plan of how I'm going to live my life. That Joe Borio would have walked in, okay, I trust this guy. Yeah, geez, my blood pressure is a little up. You know what? Geez, my cholesterol is a little elevated. Yeah, you know what? I would like to lose a little weight. Give me a shot every day. Like all of a sudden, that guy's getting all those medications. Who knows what else? That's what's out there. So when Fred uses the example of a mom who wants nothing but the best for their child, bringing them to a pediatrician, and the pediatrician says, well, Linda, obviously I'm really concerned about this, that, and the other thing. So the child's getting loaded with shots and loaded with different medications, whether it's steroids or antibiotics or what have, or a whole combination of stuff. And that's in their repertoire. They're never getting told, hey, let's change your lifestyle. They're never being told, hey, your nervous system runs energy and communication and coordinates activities in your body. Let's look at your son's nervous system. Let's get an idea what's going on with their overall health and function. Never. Zero. They're never getting it. They'll never get it. That's why what we teach is so critical. Every time you meet a parent, a mother, is an opportunity to have the conversation. Is it always going to go great? No, but it's always worth the conversation. And if you do it that way consistently, more and more people follow. And then, like Fred and I were talking about, you walk in our offices and you're like, shit, look at all these freaking people in here. You know, I want to be part of that energy. They're not like, oh my God, this guy's busy, I'm not coming in. They're totally the opposite. Like, damn, I want some of what this guy's selling. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah. All right, man. Sounds good. I'm already late for my next coaching.
Yeah, all right, let's go.
So, hey, hang out, take these one-liners, take this mindset thought process, and we're going to be continuing with the day 2 moving forward. There were some things that if you do what we talked about today, even some of those one-liners and questions, you will definitely make a difference. All right. Love you guys.
Like, post, share. Like, post, share. Goodbye.
Like, post, share. Thanks. Take care.